Our next speaker is no stranger to the Airline Pilots Association, having served as its president from 1991 to 1998 and in numerous other association capacities for many years prior. Captain Randy Babbitt was sworn in as the FAA's 16th administrator on June 1, 2009, and like Congressman Lungren, has also demonstrated strong leadership on the problem of lasers. I had the pleasure of appearing with the administrator earlier this year at a press conference at which he announced the creation of a new method of pursuing civil penalties against anyone who aims a laser at an aircraft. We're delighted today to be working so closely with the FAA on this and many other aviation challenges. We'll hear from the administrator, followed by Tom Hendricks, Senior Vice President of the Air Transport Association, and then I'll make a few remarks. At the conclusion of these presentations, I'll open the floor up to your questions. Administrator Babbitt.
Well, thank you, Lee, and it really is a pleasure to come over and address this group this morning. I'm particularly pleased that you have such a coalition of interested parties. In my time here in Washington, in a variety of different roles, while sometimes we have different positions with the people we work with, often when you step back and look at the issue in front of you, you're going to find that everyone in this room has more in common on a lot of fronts than they do differences. So you can agree to disagree on what you disagree about, and if you can focus your combined energies on what you agree on, we can get something done. We're gathered here today clearly to get the word out about lasers, and Lee mentioned one of the things that, and I applaud ALPA and Captain Moak's leadership on, was to have a very public event out at National Airport to get the word out about the danger of lasers. And let me start with acknowledging that laser technology is very useful. We use them for everything. We use them in surgery. We use them for engraving. They read the barcodes when you check out of the supermarket or the drugstore. They're really very useful. But they're incredibly dangerous when turned toward an aircraft, and I think we all understand the ramifications of that. They put people at risk, they put the pilots at risk, they put all the passengers on the airplane at risk, and the thought that a lot of people kind of gloss over, you potentially put people on the ground at risk if there were to be a tragedy. As a former commercial airline pilot myself, I know full well that shining a laser into the cockpit is an incredibly dangerous safety risk. Lasers can temporarily blind, and these temporary is anything from 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. 30 seconds in an airplane is a lifetime, and it could be a lot of lifetimes. So I think we need to underscore that and make that thought, very clear to the folks that we're trying to appeal to. You put so many lives at risk. And I really do hope that we can do a better job of capturing the public's attention. I've had people come up to me after the event that we did at National Airport, and they'd say, is this really happening? Does this really go on out there? And although it seems unbelievable that someone would shine a laser, and as the Congressman said, it's incredibly stupid, but yet people actually do it. And it's a lack of knowledge that they do that. And it's a very serious safety issue that we need to confront. So we're going to do everything in our power to deter these lasing incidents. And I guess the key part here, we need the public's help. If the public is unaware of the danger of this, and they have the ability to help us by identifying where this is going on, we need to make certain they understand the depth of this problem. We want to encourage the reporting of laser events by everybody, by pilots, air traffic controllers. Someone will remark that, geez, I think we just got hit by a laser. Fine. We want to know where the aircraft was precisely, and they do that. We can go back and recreate, with a radar capture, exactly where the airplane was. And yes, as someone pointed out, it is hard to find out, but the more people that are reporting it, the more we draw down the circle to where the event came from. So we want to encourage it also, by the public. If you see someone or as this word gets out, we want to encourage people, if you see someone in your neighborhood shooting a laser into the sky, report it. Chances are it's probably not harmless. And again, we know that these powerful lasers can get into the hands of people who either through misinformation, misunderstanding, or mischief can do some serious damage with it. They're not toys. And that's the one thing we want to make certain that we get out there. We now have green laser devices that are widely available in the marketplace. They're stronger, they're readily seen, and they can travel for miles. So in order to help educate the public and make it easier to report a lasing event, we at the FAA have created a new website devoted to the issue, and we're going to launch that website today. I'll read you the whole thing in case you want to, for those of you following along at home. It is www.faa.gov, G-O-V, / the word go, G-O, / laserinfo, one word, L-A-S-E-R-I-N-F-O, all one word, /. So pilots can go to this site and report, air traffic controllers, even the public can go to this site and report a lasing incident. Our goal here is to seriously decrease, actually to eliminate lasing incidents nationwide. You heard the Congressman give you some numbers. There were more than 2,800 last year. We've got more than 2,700 already reported this year. And that's a marked increase since we started keeping records only 6 years ago. In 2005, there were only 300. Now, was it a lack of reporting or the rates going up? Either one is cause for concern. The top 3 metro areas, and these are not prizes you want to win, Phoenix with 96, flat, open, clear skies, a lot of incidents out there, 96. Philadelphia, 95. Chicago, 83. What's in common here? Large metropolitan airports located in large metropolitan areas. Access to these, absent of mountains and other things. So partnering with our law enforcement, and I'm so happy to see so many people here that are helping us with the enforcement of these, is going to be a very important part of combating this problem. In Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, the FAA provided some technical expertise to help the city develop an ordinance to make it illegal to possess a laser if you're a minor. It also makes lasing an aircraft a misdemeanor. Now, Myrtle Beach has one of the higher levels of incidents in the country. And again, it's a vacation spot. People take lasers there, and you've got a beachfront and all that. But now they have an ordinance. Previously, when Myrtle Beach police would respond to an incident, they'd find, a dozen teenagers, all with lasers, but they couldn't do anything. There was nothing illegal. Well, now it is illegal. Now they have an ordinance. Cities and states across the country are helping us to combat laser incidents by passing laws and making regulations to make it illegal to do these obviously mischievous and very potentially dangerous incidents and make the practice illegal. Now, we at the FAA have taken and gone to an unusual step on the national level. June this year, we announced that we were going to begin to impose civil penalties or fines against those who shine a laser into the cockpit of an aircraft. And I think we did this fairly cleverly with an interpretation of a long-standing federal regulation that prohibits and makes it a very serious federal crime to interfere with the duties of a flight crew. And this interpretation is clear that shining a laser at an aircraft does in fact cause interference with the flight crew's duties. Individuals violating this regulation are subject to civil penalties of up to $11,000, an amount that hopefully will serve as a very strong deterrent. Now, usually when people think of interfering with a flight crew, they think about disruption on the aircraft itself. Those of you who earn your living in the airplanes know, how disruptive that can be when a passenger begins to disturb the aircraft from inside. This takes the interpretation to outside the aircraft, and taking the position that pointing a laser does in fact interfere with the flight crew's ability to fly the airplane, and it's distractive. It's every bit as serious. Now, people have said to me, well, it's going to be awfully hard to track those down. Well, let me tell you here today, we have 18 cases now in progress in various stages of the legal process. That's serious. That gets people's attention. And we have every bit of a serious intent to continue following these up. Obviously, we need information. We can get it from the flight crews, air traffic control, people on the ground. But when we get that information, we're going to go after these folks. And hopefully, a few people paying $11,000 fines around the country will get the attention of others who will say, you know, that wasn't the best idea I thought of. Maybe I'll just shine it at the cat and move on to something else. We understand that not everybody who's shining a laser in the sky is doing this purposefully to do harm. So in our new laser website, we lay out a lot of information to the public about how to safely plan a light show, how to have an outdoor laser activity. They're not all malicious, and we want people to understand there's a right way to do this, and we give them that information on the website. We want to work with the people who are doing this for the best of intentions, but we want everyone to understand what an absolutely serious issue this is if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. We're going to do everything we can do to protect the safety of our pilots, our passengers, and our aircraft. And the FAA will stand shoulder to shoulder with you to bring about as much enforcement as we can possibly do, obviously with the limitations of our own regulations. So again, I want to thank you all for coming out today. I really appreciate the collaborative approach that you're taking here. It's one that's going to bring us a benefit. And in the end of the day, what we're all trying to do here is improve the safety of the traveling public. And I commend you for taking the time to get together, work together, and by doing just that, I think we can decrease this very dangerous practice. Thank you.
I've known Captain Tom Hendricks for more years than either one of us probably cares to remember. Most recently at Delta Airlines, where we served as flight crew members. Tom is now the Senior Vice President of Safety, Security, and Operations for the Airline Transport Association, ATA. We at the Airline Pilots Association have a strong working relationship with the ATA, and I couldn't be more pleased than when they chose to co-host this event with us. ATA and their member airlines are strong supporters of all reasonable measures to stop the growing problem of laser strikes against our aircraft. Tom, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thanks very much, Lee, and we appreciate the opportunity that the Airline Pilots Association has presented us with in this important forum today. Administrator Babbitt, it's always a pleasure to have you at these very important events. In addition to these key aviation leaders, we'd like to add our thanks to Congressman Lungren for his efforts to pass this important legislation that makes the use of lasers against aircraft a specific federal crime. Let me begin my remarks by giving you a little perspective. As a retired military pilot and retired airline captain, I know this threat well, and I salute everyone here for their interest in this topic. One early evening in the early 90s, about 1993, I believe, I was flying a Boeing 727 over Las Vegas at about 35,000 feet. And I was amazed to see a huge green laser being shined into the clear night sky above the city. After trying to determine the source of the light, exactly the wrong thing to do, we now know, it became apparent to me that it was emanating from a large pyramid structure. Yes, it was a casino that had just opened in downtown Las Vegas. Well, the incident did not present a danger at that time to me, and I saw it from many miles away. This was really a wake-up call for me personally, the airline piloting profession, and the airline industry. Professional pilots of all types, military, commercial, helicopter, and general aviation, consider lasers to be a serious threat to the safe operation of their aircraft. America's airlines provide the safest possible mode of transportation to deliver passengers and goods around the globe. Despite all of the laser strikes reported each year, U.S. commercial aviation is able to maintain this singular distinction because of at least 2 highly trained professionals, pilots in each of our cockpits, the support of their companies, and that of our regulator, the FAA. Unfortunately, the proliferation of lasers has accelerated in recent years, and this growing threat is well documented in FAA reports from pilots and air traffic controllers. Even though today's commercial aircraft are multi-piloted, they remain particularly vulnerable during the takeoff, approach, and landing phases of flight. Let's look at the approach and landing situation. Good operating practice requires that one pilot concentrate on actually flying the aircraft with reference to instruments in order to maintain a stable airspeed and rate of descent on the final approach course on the appropriate glide path. This pilot is heads down. In general, his attention is focused on flying the aircraft with reference to inside the aircraft. We refer to the other pilot during this period as the pilot monitoring or the pilot not flying, who must divide his attention between monitoring the instrument approach and glancing outside for visual cues as the aircraft approaches a height at which a decision to land or abandon the approach must be made. This is a critical altitude, mere hundreds of feet above the ground, when the pilot monitoring calls out runway in sight, and the pilot flying must shift his scan from inside the cockpit to the runway environment characterized by bright approach lights, runway end identifier lights, centerline lighting, runway edge lights, not to mention painted markings depicting touchdown zone and runway remaining signage. These tasks are even more demanding when conducting approaches at night, because a pilot's eyes are adapted to the darkness. Their pupils are wide open, gathering information from the dimly lit cockpit instruments or scanning through fog or mist to locate ground references that appear diffuse in the darkness. This environment can be suddenly penetrated by a sharp source of light of great intensity that reflects off the angled cockpit glass and could dazzle the pilots. This has caused temporary disorientation, flash blindness, and a startle factor for numerous pilots, and in a very few cases, eye damage. Another risk is the temporary disruption in the ability to interpret their instruments and execute a safe transition to landing. Pilots might abandon the approach and execute a go-around. Now, some may say that automation is an easy solution to this problem, but pilots would then have to rely on their tactile senses and memory of the location and function of certain switches and buttons in the appropriate sequence to re-engage automation if their vision is impaired. The public can well appreciate this external threat against the backdrop of national transportation security. As I previously stated, safety experts in our industry and regulatory environment have made great strides in reducing the risk of fatal accidents to the lowest point in aviation history. We attribute our success to working collaboratively to identify hazards, assess risks, and develop appropriate layered defenses to control the risk and avert potential catastrophe. The proliferation of lasers poses a threat that we cannot control without the cooperation of our public, law enforcement agencies, and the airport security network. How do we improve the situation and reduce the threat? Today's forum is an important step in increasing the education of the public of this growing phenomenon. Further, airlines and unions must work together to help educate pilots and provide robust reporting mechanisms so we can better measure the scope of the threat to the traveling public. America's airlines stand ready to partner with members of the aviation community to ensure that we keep this already safe system even safer. Administrator Babbitt, Captain Moak, America's Airlines stand with you in helping to solve this evolving threat. Thank you and look forward to any questions.
All right, thanks, Tom. Now I'd like to take a few minutes and give you the airline pilot's perspective on laser strikes and let you know what we're doing and advocating to stop the illegitimate use of handheld lasers against aviation. Lasers aren't a new threat to aviation safety, but the rapidly increasing number of incidents is new and a serious concern for ALPA. Of the 2,836 reports that the FAA recorded in 2010, about 1,700 of them involved airliners. Of the 2010 events, 2 resulted in significant injury to Airline Pilots Association pilots, to our pilots. While this may seem like a relatively low percentage, ALPA has a zero tolerance for people who deliberately attempt to injure our pilots, our aircraft, our passengers. Consumers can now purchase ultra-high-powered laser pointers for just a few $100s. Currently, no restrictions or checks are in place to ensure that the purchasers of such devices intend to use them for legitimate purposes and not for the purpose of disrupting flight operations. While ALPA can't release specific details or medical reports regarding the individual events, our aeromedical office has referred dozens of pilots for medical treatment over the years, some of whom suffered lasting effects from laser illumination. In many cases, this is not a prank. It is an overt act with the potential to injure pilots and passengers. And again, ALPA takes it seriously. At a minimum, aiming a laser at an aircraft can create a dangerous distraction for pilots, especially when the aircraft is close to the ground during the busiest and most critical phase of flight, the takeoff and landing phase. In more serious cases, a laser illumination can cause temporary blindness and incapacitation and even permanently damage a pilot's eyes. One of my earliest initiatives as ALPA's president was to develop an action plan back in January to deal with this problem. Our plan urges implementing an effective response to those who would endanger the traveling public and pilots by the illegitimate use of lasers. Now, we have fully supported Congressman Lungren's legislation, H.R. 386, the Securing Aircraft Cockpits Against Lasers Act of 2011, a bill, like as he stated, that makes shining a laser at an aircraft a specific federal crime. On February 4, 2011, the Senate passed an amendment to the FAA reauthorization bill with similar language, and we commended Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Mark Kirk, and Senator Barbara Boxer for championing this amendment. ALPA has urged Congress to include this legislative language in the FAA reauthorization bill. The U.S. government must restrict the sale and use of portable lasers that are strong enough to cause injury. ALPA has called on the government to consider the threat posed by the use of these powerful handheld lasers against aircraft. These lasers are being specifically marketed to young people who do not know the dangers they pose to aviation. Congress should hold a hearing on this important subject. The FAA has, and we continue to work with them to develop and implement improved air traffic control and pilot operating procedures for responding to and notifying pilots about the rerouting of aircraft around threat areas when the reports of an illumination are received. A rapid response to laser illuminations that quickly and effectively informs local and state law enforcement in the vicinity of the lasing greatly enhances the likelihood that someone who is seeking to cause harm will be found and can be prosecuted. The FAA must develop ATC procedures that would be utilized after an occurrence to notify the pilots in the threat area and reroute the aircraft away from the threat. This recommendation is in concert with our efforts to establish threat and airspace management procedures for many types of threats to airborne aircraft. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, must add deliberate laser illumination of all modes of transportation to its list of most wanted transportation security improvements. In the past, NTSB has investigated laser illumination events and has issued recommendations. ALPA calls on the board to reinitiate this interest and help raise the level of awareness and recognition of the threat to the safety of the traveling public. News media reports of incidents in other modes of transportation show that laser illuminations are not just a safety threat to aviation. Similar lasings have occurred in trucking, boating, and railway operations. The public also has a critical role in keeping pilots and ultimately passengers and cargo safe from lasers. Shining a laser in an aircraft can potentially put lives in danger. Consumers across the country and around the globe have a role and a responsibility, and I believe an obligation in ensuring the safety of the airline passengers passengers with whom they share the sky by eliminating laser strikes and reporting those known to misuse lasers by shining them at aircraft. The public needs to understand that if they observe someone shining a laser, they are potentially witnessing a crime and should report that immediately to law enforcement officials. Thank you.